All right, so we're diving into some recent news and reports about how ICE is changing under the new administration. And let me tell you, things are moving fast.
Fast is right.
Yeah, and remember all that back and forth about ICE being able to arrest people near schools or churches, that sensitive locations policy?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's back.
Which is a pretty significant shift, yeah.
It is.
Definitely signals a more aggressive approach to immigration enforcement.
Yeah.
To really grasp the scope of these changes, though, we need to kind of look at where things were under the Biden administration.
Right. Good point. Good point.
You know?
Yeah, it's easy to think that things were just sort of lax before, but even under Biden, I mean, ICE was actively enforcing immigration laws.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
They were focused on deporting people who had committed serious crimes while in the country.
Right, right. But now under, well, the new Trump administration,
Yeah.
the definition of criminal has really expanded.
Yeah, like a lot.
Significantly. I mean, the White House spokesperson, Caroline Leavitt, basically said they consider all undocumented immigrants to be criminals.
Wow.
That's a huge change in terms of who ICE can target.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just about who they can target.
No, it's not.
They've also brought back secondary arrests.
Oh, yeah.
So if ICE agents go after someone they consider a criminal, and then let's say they just happen to encounter other undocumented individuals in the process,
Yeah.
those people can be arrested too.
It's a ripple effect.
Right. It's like just this expanding net.
Exactly. And then when you look at the numbers, it gets even more concerning.
Yeah, break it down for us.
Well, just in the first week of this new policy, there were over 5,500 arrests.
That's
almost 800 arrests a day.
Jeez.
And to put that in perspective, all of fiscal year 2024, ICE made around 113,000 arrests.
Okay.
Which averages out to about 310 per day.
Wow, so the pace has really picked up.
Oh, yeah.
And they're not slowing down.
It doesn't sound like it.
No, and Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, has stated that they want each of ICE's 25 field offices to be making at least 75 arrests every single day.
Every single day?
Every single day.
So if they actually hit that target, we're talking about 1,875 arrests happening across the U.S. every day.
That's a lot.
It's a massive logistical challenge. I mean, just imagine the strain that puts on the immigration court system.
Right.
The legal resources needed, the potential for even longer detention times for migrants.
Yeah, this feels like, more than just a policy shift. This is like a
complete overhaul.
Yeah, a complete overhaul.
It is.
And it's not just ICU doing this, is it?
No, it's not.
You've got, Customs and Border Protection, CBP, has been given, expanded search authority.
Right. They can now conduct immigration checks within 100 miles of any U.S. border or coastline.
100 miles?
100 miles.
Think about it. That's like a huge percentage of Americans now live within that zone.
Huge percentage, yeah.
That raises a lot of questions about, the Fourth Amendment and unreasonable searches and seizures.
Definitely.
Haven't there been Supreme Court cases about this kind of thing?
There have, yeah.
How does this new policy fit in with all of those past rulings?
Well, it's definitely going to be challenged in court.
I would think so.
There's a long history of legal debate about balancing border security with individual liberties.
Right.
And this new policy, this one pushes the boundaries of that debate even further.
Further than ever.
Further than ever before.
Yeah, it's really venturing into, uncharted territory.
It is. It is.
And then on top of the CBP expansion, the Trump administration is pushing for increased partnerships between ICEER and state and local law enforcement agencies.
Right. The details of those partnerships are still a bit vague, but it's something worth keeping an eye on, definitely.
Yeah, it could significantly impact how immigration laws are enforced in, your own community.
Yeah, depending on where you live.
Depending on where you live and how your local law enforcement chooses to cooperate.
Absolutely.
It's like they're weaving a much tighter net. And then there's the military involvement, which feels like, I don't know, we're blurring some lines here.
Yeah.
Like lines we haven't crossed before.
It's a big shift.
It is.
Yeah.
We've seen active duty troops deployed to the southern border.
Yeah.
Military aircraft used for deportation flights. And even a Space Force base repurposed as a detention center.
Using military resources like this, for immigration enforcement, it's definitely a significant departure from past practices.
Yeah.
It raises concerns about militarizing immigration.
For sure.
And potentially eroding civilian control over the military.
Right.
The implications are, pretty serious.
It feels like a major escalation.
It is.
And then there's, this is the plan that's really setting off alarm bells.
Yeah.
The one about using Guantanamo Bay
yeah.
to detain tens of thousands of migrants.
That's a highly controversial proposal, logistically and ethically.
No, it just feels like the exact opposite of what Guantanamo was intended for, right?
No,
Holding people indefinitely without trial.
Well, the use of Guantanamo has certainly evolved over time.
That's true.
But using it as a mass detention center for migrants on this scale is unprecedented.
Yeah, it raises serious questions.
It does.
About due process, international law, and the treatment of individuals who are, just fleeing difficult situations.
Yeah. I mean, are we really going to hold families and children in a place that has become synonymous with human rights violations?
That's a really disturbing thought.
It is.
And how would that even work? I mean, Guantanamo isn't exactly equipped to handle tens of thousands of people.
No, it's not.
The logistics alone seem overwhelming.
You're absolutely right. It would require a massive investment of resources and infrastructure, not to mention the legal challenges they'd face.
Of course.
And then there's the question of how other countries would react.
Yeah, how's the rest of the world going to feel about this?
I mean, the optics of using Guantanamo this way are problematic, to say the least.
It feels like we're stepping onto a very slippery slope.
It does, yeah.
This isn't just a policy debate. It's a debate about who we are as a nation, about what our values are.
Yeah, our values.
And are we willing to compromise them in the name of border security?
Big questions.
Yeah, big questions, big questions.
It's a crucial moment. It's vital for everyone to be informed and engaged.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It is a lot to think about.
It is.
We've gone from, changes in arrest priorities and who's considered a criminal to this potential surge in daily arrests.
Right.
All while involving more government agencies and even the military.
Yeah.
It's a drastic shift for sure.
It does feel like we've just hit fast forward on immigration enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
But the Guantanamo plan.
Right.
I mean, that's not just a policy tweak.
It's not a small thing.
It feels like a whole different ballgame. Almost a line in the sand.
That's a good way to put it. Guantanamo carries a lot of historical baggage and symbolic weight.
It does.
I mean, to use it for housing migrants, especially on a large scale,
right,
raises a whole host of legal and ethical concerns.
Yeah, we can't just brush those aside.
No, we can't.
And it's not just the ethical side.
No.
The logistics of it are mind-boggling.
They are, yeah.
I mean, how do you even prepare a place like Guantanamo for that kind of influx?
Right.
And what about the cost?
Exactly.
It seems like they're just creating a whole new set of problems while trying to solve another.
There are a lot of unknowns with this plan.
There are.
It's worth noting, though, this isn't the first time using Guantanamo to house migrants has been proposed.
Oh, really?
Similar ideas were floated, during previous administrations.
Okay.
But they ultimately faced significant legal and logistical hurdles and were never actually implemented.
So what's different this time?
Well,
why bring it back now?
It's hard to say for sure, but there are definitely a few factors at play.
Like what?
Well, the sheer volume of migrants arriving at the border is definitely one of them. The administration argues that existing detention facilities are overwhelmed and they need additional capacity.
Okay, so they're saying they need more space, basically?
Exactly.
But wouldn't creating like a massive detention center like Guantanamo actually encourage more people to come, hoping to eventually be released into the U.S.? Doesn't that seem counterproductive?
It's a valid concern.
It does.
And it highlights just how complex this issue really is.
Yeah.
There's no simple solution.
Right.
And, any action is likely to have unintended consequences that ripple outwards.
Yeah.
It's a delicate balancing act with no easy answers.
It really is. And what about the reaction from the international community?
Yeah.
How will other countries, especially our allies, view the U.S. using Guantanamo, a place with, let's face it, a very controversial history to detain migrants?
Well, it's bound to draw criticism.
I would imagine so.
From human rights organizations and possibly even from some of our allies.
Right.
The optics of using Guantanamo in this way are very problematic, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
It sends a message that contradicts the values of, human rights and due process that we claim to uphold.
It feels like a move that could damage our reputation.
It could.
On the world stage.
Yeah.
And potentially strain relationships with key allies.
It could. It could.
And it's not just about the migrants themselves, is it?
No, it's not.
It's about what this says about us.
Yeah.
About us as a nation, about our values
Mm-hmm.
and our commitment to human rights.
Absolutely. This isn't just a policy debate.
No.
It's a debate about who we are as a nation and what we stand for.
Yeah.
And it's a debate that, well, every citizen should be engaged in.
They should.
We need to be asking ourselves, are we comfortable with this approach?
Right.
What kind of message does this send to the world?
Yeah.
And more importantly, to ourselves?
It's a moment of reckoning.
It is.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's not over yet.
No, it's not.
I mean, the administration seems determined to push forward with this plan, but there will undoubtedly be legal challenges.
Oh, absolutely. There are numerous legal questions surrounding the use of Guantanamo for this purpose.
Like what?
Well, does the president even have the authority to do this?
Right.
Does it violate international law?
Yeah.
I mean, these questions are going to be fiercely debated in the courts.
I bet.
And it's likely to be a long and contentious legal battle.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
And in the meantime,
Yeah.
what happens to the migrants who are already in detention?
Right.
Are they being transferred to Guantanamo?
What are the conditions like in these existing facilities?
Those are all critical questions, and unfortunately, there's a real lack of transparency when it comes to conditions in migrant detention centers.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Reports from human rights groups have raised concerns about overcrowding, inadequate medical care, and even instances of abuse.
It's a very troubling situation.
It is.
It's hard to even imagine what these people are going through. The uncertainty and fear they must be facing.
It's hard to fathom.
We can't let these stories be forgotten.
No, we can't.
Brushed aside.
We need to shine a light on what's happening in these detention centers
Yeah.
and hold those in power accountable for ensuring humane treatment for everyone,
Right.
regardless of their immigration status.
It's easy to get lost in all this.
I know, right?
Yeah, the policy details, the legal arguments. We forget that there are real people at the center of all of this.
It's crucial to remember that. Absolutely crucial.
It is.
These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, you know?
Right.
We're talking about individuals and families with hopes and dreams, just like you and me,
Yeah.
and their lives are being turned upside down.
Yeah. It's important to remind ourselves of that.
Yeah.
And to remember that these individuals, they come from such diverse backgrounds
Oh, absolutely.
with their own unique stories.
Yeah.
Some are fleeing violence and persecution.
Right.
Others are seeking economic opportunity or family reunification.
Exactly. And many of them have been living in the U.S. for years, contributing to their communities, raising families, building lives.
Right. There are our neighbors, our coworkers, the people we interact with every day.
That's right.
So let's move beyond the headlines about arrest numbers
Yeah.
and try to understand what happens to these individuals after they're detained.
Well, the process can vary depending on their circumstances, but it often involves, being held in a detention center while awaiting immigration proceedings.
Right.
And these detention centers are often overcrowded, and conditions can be quite harsh.
We've heard reports of, families being separated, children being held in cages,
That's awful.
individuals being denied basic necessities like adequate medical care.
It's hard to fathom the trauma
It is.
that inflicts, especially on children.
And even for those who are eventually released, the fear and uncertainty don't just disappear.
No, they don't. The threat of deportation can hang over their heads for years, making it incredibly difficult to rebuild their lives, find a sense of stability.
It's like living in a constant state of limbo,
It is.
never knowing what the future holds.
Absolutely.
And this fear and uncertainty, it doesn't just affect the individuals themselves.
Right. Their families suffer too.
Their communities suffer too.
Businesses lose valuable employees. Communities are torn apart.
It creates a ripple effect
It does.
that extends far beyond the individuals who are directly targeted by these policies.
Exactly.
And this isn't just happening at the border.
No.
We're seeing ICE raids in communities across the country.
Creating a climate of fear and mistrust.
Right. And that can be incredibly damaging.
It is. When people are afraid to go to work, to take their children to school, even to seek medical care for fear of being reported to authorities, it undermines the fabric of our communities.
It forces people further into the shadows,
It does.
making them more vulnerable to exploitation and abuse.
Absolutely.
And it also erodes trust in law enforcement,
Right.
makes it less likely that people will cooperate with the police or report crimes.
Yeah, it's a lose-lose situation for everyone involved.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. So where do we go from here?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is.
How do we move forward as a society in a way that upholds our values,
Right.
protects the rights of all individuals?
I think it starts with recognizing the humanity of those affected by these policies.
I think so too,
We
Jack.
need to listen to their stories,
We do.
understand their struggles, empathize with their experiences.
And challenge the dehumanizing rhetoric
Yes.
that's often used to describe immigrants.
Absolutely. Words have power.
They do.
And the way we talk about these issues really shapes our perceptions and actions.
It does.
We need to remember that immigrants are not a monolithic group.
No, they're not.
They come from diverse backgrounds, different stories, different aspirations, and we need to advocate for policies that are just humane and compassionate.
Yes. Policies that uphold the dignity of all individuals.
Regardless of their immigration status.
Absolutely.
That means holding our elected officials accountable.
It does.
Pushing for comprehensive immigration reform and supporting organizations that are working, on the ground to provide legal aid and other essential services to immigrant communities.
It's a long road ahead.
It is.
But change is possible.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen throughout history that social movements have the power to bring about meaningful change.
That's right.
So let's not give up hope.
Let's not.
Let's continue to engage in dialogue, raise awareness, and work towards a future where all individuals are treated with dignity and respect.
I think that's a great goal to strive for.
This deep dive it's giving you a glimpse into the complex and often heartbreaking realities of immigration in the U.S. today.
Yeah.
But this isn't the end.
Yeah.
This is just the beginning.
It is. There's so much more to learn.
Yeah.
To understand, to do.
We encourage you to continue exploring these issues.
Yes.
Challenge your own assumptions. And to use your voice to advocate for a more just and compassionate world.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
We hope it has inspired you to learn more, think critically, and take action.